I have two questions. The first is, one of the things that I've noticed over the past 3 years is stress level in children. And I'm talking about elementary school children at this point.
It's gone up or down?
I beg your pardon?
The stress has gone up or down?
Significantly up, to the
Okay.
point of being non-communicative. In Saugus, Massachusetts, last year in the fifth grade, my oldest grandson took the MCAS math exam and got one question wrong out of the entire exam. And he has been historically higher than his school performance in terms of his individual performance. On entering, and this was with one math class daily, on entering sixth grade, because his middle school was an underperforming school, they decided that children who were top academic students would be having math twice a day. One class teaches mathematics. The second class teaches some more mathematics, but also some testing. At the end of the first trimester of school, there was an addition of a third every other day mathematics class on a 2-week rotation. The specific purpose of this class was so that the students themselves could evaluate their performance in mathematics MCAS exams and work out their issues of performance. At no point in time was ever any information transmitted to the families about the fact that these kids can actually opt out of that third math class. So we take a boy who has almost a perfect score, one question away from perfect, and we put him in 3 math classes. When I questioned the superintendent about it, the answer I received from the superintendent was that perhaps he needed some remedial instruction, which of course is really laughable. Now my question to you is, Donna, on your team of people, number one, do you have somebody who assesses the stress level? Is there a psychologist who has written any papers, or either Jamie or Dr. Stutsky, either of you, have a psychologist?
Do we have any psychiatrists that are, or psychologists?
Because this plays into harm, okay? Physical and mental harm. This becomes a tort.
The early childhood educators there's a petition by early childhood educators from about 250 to about maybe 500 of them that came out several years ago. If you just Google, you can find it. They have looked into some of the issues of stress. I cannot say there were psychiatrists involved, but these were early childhood psychologists and other
Psychologist is what I'm looking for, yes. Okay, or an attorney.
Psychologist, not a psychiatrist.
Either one.
There's a, I can't remember her name off the top
There's
of
a
my head, but there
method
was
to
a,
my
we spoke at an event out in Megan, was it?
Opchick, something like that.
Megan Kopchak. She's a psychologist in child psychologist in Indiana. If you do a Google search for Common Core Notre Dame, I think it was a
Notre Dame?
You
spoke there.
Megan something Kopchak. She did a video on it. I mean, and that's the only sort of testimony that I've heard about the inappropriateness of some of these standards. But again, I think it speaks to the fact of what Dr. Stotsky said. The people who developed these had really no experience with K-12 education standards before and being in classrooms. And now these are standards that are going to impact 50 million school children. And so to have a disconnect like that between people that write the standards and what goes on in the schools is tremendous. I mean, it's a stark contrast to the efforts that were done here in Massachusetts under Sandy, in which there was tons of input from teachers on the development of the previous standards, which is why they were so good and coherent, is that there was someone, a kind of prime mover behind it who had a lot of experience, but then got a lot of input not only from academics, but teachers, and kind of integrated it all together. The problem
Why can't
is,
we go right back to it? Why can't we just say,
That's the million-dollar
stop,
question.
and go back?
You could, but the legislature would have to do it, or the Board of Ed would have to undo its decision, and for face-saving reasons, like 40 other boards of ed, it will not do that. This is a problem all over the country.
but I think, again, I would encourage you to reach out to your legislators, and I'll probably appeal several more times before, we close tonight. reach out to the governor and the governor's people and to the Secretary of Education, because I think that on the park side of it, and then the Common Core peeling back the standards or trying to undo it, other governors have done executive orders, either pulling their state out of the park, and again, half the states that were in a couple years ago have done this, so it can be done. Then you can open the conversation about fighting on the substance of the standards. But this can be done, but you have to reach out to get to your legislators and to the governor and the governor's people, because it can be won, but people have got to make their voices heard. Because anything that you heard tonight that's problematic, you know, I would encourage you to reach out on it. The other thing that's important to note, too, is that the new head of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, Barbara Mataloni, is opposed to Common Core and opposed to Park, and has become increasingly vocal in it. So again, I want to reiterate, this is not a partisan issue. It's not a conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican. There's, as people say, if you dislike Common Core, there's something for everyone in this one. And I think we're beginning to see that, in fact, there's no real constituency for Common Core other than the State Department of Ed and a couple of think tanks that have gotten money. But there's not a lot of widespread support, and we're seeing this in places like New York and New Jersey and across the country. The polling data is horrendous for the Common Core support among really almost every demographic, and I think that's one of the big advantages we have.